Hi, I'm Brendan, and today I'm going to take you through servicing your Chris King headset bearings. So let's jump in. So the tools you're going to need first be Chris King's new blue grease, which is specifically formulated for headset bearings. I like a sharpened spoke just for resetting the snap ring. It can be really handy. I'm using a non-sharpened spoke to apply the grease, just because you need something small to get it down in the bearings, and this works pretty well in the absence of a squeeze tube. Potentially new snap rings and new seals. You can usually get away without these, but sometimes you'll bend a snap ring or the seal will rip, and in that case you need new ones. And then I like an old utility knife, and this has a very old dull blade, but it's still fairly stiff, and this works really well for removing the snap ring. Chris King recommends a thin, small screwdriver. I haven't found very many that are thin enough to work as well as this, so this is my tool of choice. And then finally you'll need some sort of a rag to wipe things down as you go. Chris King recommends using an air compressor to blow the headset bearings out. You can use that, that's ideal, but you can also, if you don't have one, still do a good job. So to start, you need to clean off any dirt that's on the outside of the headset. That way no dirt will get in when you open the headset up. First off, locate the split in the snap ring. Find the part that points in toward the center of the headset, toward where the steer tube would be, and take your utility knife or your small screwdriver, and you're gonna basically try to get under this a little bit and push it in to dislodge it from its slot. While you're doing this, be really careful to not puncture the seal, and even more careful not to push down too much and damage the bearings. So there we dislodged the snap ring. We're just going to work it up. And it's pulled the seal out with it. So we're just going to pull that out. Now Chris King recommends flushing the headset with a light lubricant such as WD-40 before blowing it out with compressed air. You can use WD-40, you can use Tri-Flow. I'm going to use T9. Once you've fully saturated the bearings with the lightweight lubricant, spin them to really work it in. You may find that you want to go back and do this a couple of times if the bearing appears to be really dirty. This bearing has some old grease in there. I'm going to flush it again. Spin the bearings to really work the lubricant in and dislodge any dirt. At this point, if you have an air compressor, you can do it the way Chris King recommends, which is by blowing it dry. If you don't have an air compressor, you can get by simply going back with your rag and trying to soak up all of that excess lubricant. It's not ideal, but it definitely works. So that's how I'm going to do it. If you're doing it the compressor-free way, make sure to turn the bearings as you go to expose new bearing surfaces, and make sure you get all of the excess lubricant out and all of the extra dirt. Once the bearing is all nice and clean and dry, you can go in with your Chris King blue grease and whatever applicator you're using and put it in the bearing. You don't need too much because you've got that seal that needs to go in here, and if you overpack it, you won't be able to fit the seal in. So take your time, be gentle on the bearings, try not to touch them, and your goal is just to get grease down in the slot here on top of the bearings all the way around. Once you've got grease all the way around the bearing, then you can spin the bearing. And this will help the balls work that grease down deep in and all around in all the nooks and crannies. Spinning the bearing gets all the balls to pick up grease and pull it down into the bearing. Once you have a nice consistent coating of grease down in the bearing, you can go to reinsert your seal. Before you reinsert the seal, you want to make sure it's all nice and clean. Wipe it off, and this is a good time to inspect it. Make sure to take your time when you're getting the seal in. It'll want to bunch up like this, and just going around and gently working it in will eventually take care of all those little ripples. Once you've got the seal fully seated, you can go put your snap ring back in. Make sure to clean it off before you put it in. If you have any damage to your snap ring, just get a new one. It's inexpensive and it'll save you trouble. So when you go to put your snap ring back in, locate the section of it that points outward, stretch the ring slightly so that that section is down, and work that into the groove. And go laying the snap ring down into the groove all the way around till you get to the end, and then give it a little shove and it'll settle down in there. And you can just look for that gap between the two ends, and that tells you if it's settled down in there enough. You can also check to make sure it's a clean curve. Looks good. At this point, you can just wipe off the excess grease, use any assembly grease you want to put it back together, put the bike back together and go ride. That's all there is to it. It really is a pretty simple process. So I hope you found this video useful. Have fun out there.